Good morning, everyone, here on the West Coast, and for all of you elsewhere, good afternoon. My name is Erin. I'm going to be introducing today's webinar, and with me is Dave Mills, one of our software and applications engineers here at Softree. Today, we're going to be covering culverts and fish passages. Dave is going to start by focusing on taking a look at a ballpark estimate of what the excavation volumes could be for a proposed culvert. Then he's actually going to design a box culvert. This is different than some of our culvert and fish passage webinars in the past where we've done a pipe culvert. We will include the link to the pipe culvert video for those of you interested when we do send out the recap of this. But we're going to be focusing on a box culvert today, taking that through to reporting and output, and then showing you a quick review of what you can do in our location module using something called the culvert editor panel. So the above three steps were all being done in our terrain module of RoadEng. Then we'll take a quick look at the culvert editor panel and location. And if we've got time, we're going to include a sneak peek of a new feature that actually is coming from the culvert editor panel, which is what happens when you export those culverts in location V9 and what happens when you look at them in terrain. And here's just a quick sneak preview before Dave hopefully covers this at the end, but basically we've now got 3D structures being displayed in terrain for any of the culverts that you design in location. So a fun new feature that's coming up in version 9, but today's webinar, as mentioned, is going to focus in RoadEng and version 8. And with that, that's enough of my dreadful introduction. I'm going to pass it over to Dave for the live show.
Great. Let's start with running terrain module. And we're starting off with a survey of some ground that you've all seen. I'm sorry, we looked high and low and we could not find another example that had this kind of perfect configuration for a culvert replacement. So we're using the old Hart Road example. In this example, we have a survey of an existing road. There's a creek running down here. There's an existing culvert here, and we're going to replace that. We can look at this in 3D. It's a surface model, and I think it's fairly clear that there's lots of fill in this zone. The creek runs down here and exits under the road down at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so back to the plan window. First step, we need to design an excavation to remove this material. It would be possible to use the location module to do this, but I think it's much more clear if we use the terrain module. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'll start by figuring out my elevations. The ditch here is at elevation what? Sorry, I'm using a fairly small screen because I want the video to be of a reasonable size. But anyway, you can see the elevation there is 353.9. Let's call it 354. And I want to create a graded feature that goes from the excavation up to the ground. And every time you create a new graded object, whether it's a pile or a pit or a pond, or in this case, a culvert excavation, you start with a brand new terrain. So I'm going to start with a brand new empty terrain. And I'll give it a name. This is my excavation. And first thing I want to do is put the background in there. I can use plan window options from here or from here. There we go, from the ribbon, background, add, and let's put in the original ground in the background. Now I'm going to want to, am I going to want to snap to this? I don't think I need to actually. No other options I need to set here. Zoom extent, there it is. And there's my area of interest. That's that line there is the old culvert, or at least some representation of it. So I'm going to draw a new feature from the home menu here. New feature, call it excavation. It's going to be modeled. It's going to be part of a new surface. What elevation? Well, we already looked at that. It's 354 is the elevation I want to go to. But you can see hover tips show me the elevation of the ground at any point. So I could have figured it out here too. Anyway, 354, let's start about here and go over to about there. Now I don't want just a line in the ground, I want a flat bottom for my excavation. And the easiest way to make a line into a rectangle is to actually buffer it. So let's do that. I want a linear buffer. I want to go, yeah, let's make this thing 3 meters wide. So 1.5 on each side, left and right. Same elevation. Okay, there we go. Now this feature that's left behind here, this middle one, is going to be kind of handy. So I'm going to keep that feature, and let's just change it to a dot dash for center line. That's my culvert center line or excavation center line. And now I'm going to shift click, select both of these two items and join them together and close them. Now I've got a rectangle. Now this rectangle is all at the same elevation. I could use the coordinates or Control R dialog box. Mind you, that's up here too. I could have just clicked on the right toolbar. You can see all the elevations in there, and if I wanted to, I could actually modify this elevation if I needed to tilt the whole thing or lift it up or lower it down or whatever. But that's good. I like this elevation, and now I want to grade this up to the surface. So I'll go into the terrain modeling grading tool. Oops, one little thing. Which way is this feature going? Let's go Control N, next, next. Okay, so it's counterclockwise. I want to grade it outwards to the right. So grade to the right. What am I grading to? I'm grading to the original ground. And I need to pick a slope. 100% sounds reasonable. I want lots of grading lines because this is a very small model. So every half meter I'm going to draw a line on the screen. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And I'm going to calculate a surface, but I don't need contours. Let's turn those off. And click on OK. There we go. Now, right away, it's kind of confusing here because it's telling me that I'm filling 456 cubic meters. However, that's just because I've got the current surface tagged as original. Let's call that final. And now you see it says that it's cutting. That's correct. Okay, so roughly 456 cubic meters are being cut. And that will give me something that looks like this. Let's look at that in 3D. You can see it quite clearly like this, but I can change a couple of options here, 3D options. Let's turn the background to show the surface, but make it transparent. That's what alpha means in this dialog box, is the transparency. 255 is opaque, 0 is completely missing. So 100 seems reasonable. And whoops, I turned on the wrong checkbox. Let me try that again. Shade triangles do not shade triangles. That's better. Okay. Good. So there's my excavation, and you can see the old roadway on top of it. And I've got a volume. Didn't take long to do that. I'm almost done. Probably the backfill is going to be a similar volume, but let's build a cover surface and see how much volume is used to refill it. Okay, so I'm going to start all over again. So let's just save that so we can use it later. I want to make a new surface, so again I start from a brand new terrain. Again, I'll put the, one more thing I need to do. I need to create the merged surface. that represents the original ground after the excavation has taken place. So I open up the original ground, quickly resave it under a different name. Let's call it OG plus EXC excavation. And then do this merge function. So in the terrain modeling ribbon, merge, find the excavation, there it is, and merge it in. No need to change the options, the defaults are good. And now all I need to do is recalculate the tin model. So I don't need to change any options here. Great, okay, now you can see we've got the original surface with a hole cut out of it. This is quite different from the 3D we were looking at before, which showed both surfaces. Now we're seeing one surface, which is the combination of the two. Okay, so I've merged the excavation into the original ground. Now I can build the fill. Now, ideally, we'd have a culvert in here, which would take up some space. And I'm going to show you that in a second. But I want to do the least amount of work possible to get some decent estimates of volumes and so on that you would use to maybe bid on a job like this. Okay, so now I'm going to start with a brand new terrain. Oh, did I say no? Let me just double check that. Indeed, I did say no when I was supposed to save it. Sorry, I'm just going to redo that. Merge process. And tin and save. Now start from a brand new terrain. Put this combined surface in the background. Might as well give this thing a name. I'll call it fill. Put the combined surface in the background. There it is. And I do need to snap to the surface this time. You can turn on snapping in your background properties. Right, and zoom extents, there it is. There we go. Now let's refill this at the same elevation of the old road. So I need to create a polygon that covers up this surface or this hole. Okay, so create a new feature, call it fill. Again, it's a 3D feature, draw it with the mouse. And I don't know the elevation of all these points along here, but that's okay because I have background snapping turned on. So as soon as I pick a point that is in the background, it picks up the elevation. You can see it over on the right-hand side here, that's 357.5. And I'll just keep drawing that thing. And you can see that every time I add a new point, it shows me the elevation that it's snapped to. There's the pencil. It's just showing a little black cross on there now. As I move over the feature, you get the snapping hint cursor, and I can say, yes, it's going to snap.
Hi, Dave. This might be a great chance to answer one of the first questions, which would be, how do we go about creating an excavation with benches?
Oh, that is a good question. Thanks, Aaron. The excavation, the grading tool, I'm going to show you the grading tool in just a second when I finish this thing. So let's finish it and go into the grading tool and close this. There we go. So this is now what the surface looks like, and I want to grade it down. So rather than try and snap onto a bunch of points down here and figure out the right slope by calculating or I don't know how I would do it, I'm just going to grade this line outwards. So again, I go to terrain modeling grading, and now you can see here that there's an option to use a template. This is somewhat experimental, but if I turn on, okay, first of all, which way is this going? I drew it clockwise, so it's going to the left. I'm grading down to there. If I were grading up from the bottom and I wanted to put benches in, I could turn on this use template thing and I could go in here, and I think slopes gives me some options. Basic slopes object. I'm going to have to bow out on this one. I'm not sure how you would put benches in. Obviously, it looks like the templates that are included are designed for building a roadway using the grading tool. Benches from an excavation aren't obviously covered by these template components, so I might have to get back to you on that. Okay, so for this fill, we're going down at, let's say, 1.5 to 1. There shouldn't be anything cutting upwards. It should all be negative slope, downward fill. Okay, and again, I want lots of little lines. I meant to point out where those were. Those are the lines there you can see in the background, 1/2 meter apart. That's from the excavation cut. And the fill is going to have similar projected lines going downwards. We call them slope lines. Again, I don't need contours here. And I think we're ready to go. Let's see what it looks like. Great, done. And the quantity is just slightly less than the amount we excavated. It's just under 400, 380 cubic meters. And in this case, it comes out, no, it comes out incorrect. Let's switch that around. The final is the top, so it's fill. That's right. Good. So we've got a fill volume. We've got a cut volume. And if we knew what kind of culvert was going in there, we could subtract the volume of the culvert and we could take that away from the fill volume. So with a short amount of effort in the terrain module, I have enough information to estimate what this is going to cost in terms of cuts, fills, and of course the culvert would be kind of outside of the program. In this example, I would take that culvert and figure out, first of all, what kind of culvert it's going to be, how long it's going to be. I can measure that right off of here. Let's just do that. So from here, oops, from here over to there is 25 meters roughly. So I can do an estimate. One more thing, let's take a look at 3D. It always gives you an idea of what the heck's going on. And I can see that the road looks conspicuously flat. This is just from a lack of brake lines. I actually need some brake lines going across, certainly on the center line, to get my crown correct. Let's just do a little draped feature to see what the cross-section here looks like. So I'm going to create a new feature. It's going to be a draped feature, and I'll call it section. Draw it with the mouse. Okay, and let's see what that looks like in the profile window. There we go. So as you can see, it's not showing any crown in the road. Back to the plan window, put in a couple of brake lines. Okay, so again, from the home menu, new feature, let's just call them BL for brake line. A brake line is a 3D feature with the brake line checkbox turned on. I'll draw it with the mouse. I still got that convenient snapping turned on. Actually, I can snap to the foreground here anyway, so I want one there, going across to there. Let's create another one from here over to there, and finally, and again, because I'm snapping, I don't have to worry about elevation. It picks up the elevation of the snapped point. And let's just recalculate the tin model and see what we get. And now my profile, you can clearly see the bulge in the road. So my backfill is tracking the road. Now, so at this point I would say I have accurate volumes. What are those volumes, by the way? So I'm calculating between the current surface and the original ground. That's right. 391. So it went up a little bit when I added that crown. Remember, it was 380 before. I've got the volumes, I got shapes, I can draw cross sections, I can draw long sections. I'm pretty much done. And the next part of the demonstration here will be to A, put a culvert into this and do an alternate way of filling using the location module, and B, putting in a box culvert. So let's start with the box culvert. Now I'm going to save this because I'm going to use it later, and I'm going to go back to, well, actually I'm going to just start with a brand new terrain, and let's design a box culvert. So let's call this box. And I want in the background, again, the excavation plus the original ground. That's my terrain. So you're starting to see a pattern here. You want to do some grading. You have a surface that represents the ground before you do your grading, and you put it in the background. Then you draw some features. Okay, this time I actually do want my background to be snappable, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that center line to define my box culvert. Okay, what elevation do I want? Well, the ground is 354. Of course, that's the elevation I chose. So the bottom of my excavation is 354. Let's build a box that's 1.5 meters high, so 355.5. So I'm going to draw the center of the box. And it's going to be at elevation 355.5. And oops, it's going to snap. Oh, damn. I'll fix it later. Okay, so let's say we're going from out here to out there. It'd be good if I had that fill in the background so I could see where it's going to. So let's just put that in there. Add fill. Okay. There we go. So now I can see that I just need to get outside those fill lines. That's outside the fill line. Good. Same over here. It's outside the fill line a little bit. And now it snapped onto the elevation, so it picked up the elevation of 354. I'm going to fix that. Okay, modify selected feature, or in the feature tools, I can go to Shift and just type in a new elevation. It lifts everything to the new elevation. 355.5. Okay, so that's the center line of my new box. How wide is the top going to be? Let's make it 2 meters wide. So I do that again by buffering. I mean, I could just draw a box on here with my mouse if I wanted to, but this way I get it exactly 2 meters wide. Right and left, linear, yep. There we go. So I don't really need the center line anymore. I'm going to delete it. And these two features, I'm going to again join them and close them. There's the top of my box culvert, and it's going counterclockwise, so I need to grade it outwards to the right. Grading to the right. I better pick the right thing here. I'm grading down to the original ground plus excavation. And what slope do I want? Well, unfortunately, you can't do vertical. The highest slope it lets you do is 999 or 1,000%. I'm just going to do 500 here. Actually, why don't I do 1/4 to 1? There we go. It's making a surface, and a surface can't have vertical slopes in it. So there are some limitations as to what kind of culvert you can define using this method. In our other video, which will be linked to in the email you receive after we post this video, it shows a pipe arch culvert. And again, the sides of the pipe arch culvert do not go to vertical. They're almost vertical, but not quite. Okay, let's see what this looks like. You'll see what I mean by vertical or not vertical. Okay. Already, no. There we go. Now I put both at 400%. It doesn't matter. There won't be anything except fill. So the -1 is going to be used. There we go. And this time it picked the right one. The final at the top, fill volume, 92 cubic meters. So that's roughly what you would subtract from the fill before estimating how much fill material you need. Not quite right because it's sticking out the end, right? Okay, let's see what that looks like. It looks like a bar of gold sitting there on the bottom of the excavation. Good. Now that should be subtracted from the fill. So let's go back and redo the fill with the pipe in it. Okay, so I'll just save this and reopen the fill. Now, I don't know, for some reason I might want to come back to this, so I'm just going to save this under a new name. But in general, if you're going to go to the trouble of creating a three-dimensional culvert, you probably will want to do your fill operation like I'm going to do now. So first of all, I need to add that thing in the background. So let's put the new object called box in. Oh no, I need to make a new original ground. I've got this original ground here, which is including the excavation, but I don't have one that's including the box. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to open up the original ground with the excavation in it already. And so I hope you're seeing the pattern here. You start with an original ground. You make a graded surface excavation, and you merge it in and create a new original ground, which has the hole in it. Now I've created a box which is going to sit on top of that excavation. It's the order of construction. And I'm going to merge that into the original ground. So here's the original ground with excavation. Do a merge, add the box, retin it, save. Now I can go back to that fill 2 that I just created. Change the background. Oops, wrong button. So I don't need this one anymore. What I do need is this one. Okay. And of course my fill right now is going right through there. Let's change that. So I want to go to the fill feature, which has been graded, and regrade it. Okay. And instead of going down to that, I go down to this one. Okay, and nothing else changes. There we go. Notice the volume is significantly less. It's gone down from 390 to 317, and that's because the box is already in there. So now I have much more accurate volumes. Not to say that I couldn't have estimated that before. And now we're ready to do some output and see what we've got, see what it looks like. Okay, now you might be tempted to just draw a cross-section in here, and you would get some shapes that would be pretty reasonable. But I want to see the excavation independent from the box culvert. Oh, I got a question. Oh, sorry, not, it's just an acknowledgement. Okay, I am going to open up the original ground plus excavation and put all these things in the background, and then you'll see I can make nice cross sections. So let's just do that. Better save this, make sure that everything is on the hard drive. And I want to open up this one. So to make a nice output sheet, I'm going to add some background files here. Put in the box and put in the fill number 2. That's the correct fill. Okay, there they are. And now I can start drawing cross sections. So let's do a long section first, see what it looks like. And I just need a feature that is draped. Actually, let's go right out. There we go. And here, there. Now that should be an interesting cross section. Let's see what it looks like. There. Now it's possible to change the colors and line types of all these things. So if I go into my profile options here, the background is turned on. That's why I'm seeing them. But the box culvert, let's change that to be, oh, I don't know, profile feature format. Let's change it to be blue and thick. Okay, okay. And then the fill, that's the thing on top. I think black is fine. We'll leave, well, no, let's make it red, just to illustrate. Okay, 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 there we go. And the original ground, or the excavated ground, sorry, is black. The 3D window is showing me a lot of stuff too. There we go. Just needed to update it. And you can turn on different colors and so on in here. Let's go back to the cross-section window. And I'm just going to move my cross-section to go the other way, just to illustrate you can get both kinds of cross-sections. And I can create multiples of these things too. Now, there is a glitch here. For some reason, it's not picking up the box. But if I add an extra point in the middle, it seems to work. There we go. We're working on that. With the pipe arch, it seems to work fine. With the box, it sometimes seems to skip draping over it unless you put in some extra points. Nonetheless, there it is. We got our roadway, we got our excavation, we got our box, and there's the line underneath it there too. Okay, going a little longer than I had hoped, but I'd like to show you now doing this backfill in location. I think you've all, well, anybody who's used location has probably seen the culvert tool. So this option, I've done everything inside terrain. Let's now switch over to the location module, and this should take about 5 minutes, and then we're done. And don't forget, if you do have other appointments, you can always watch the video later. Okay, let's switch over to the location module. Now, what am I going to use for my original ground? Well, location has a culvert editor, so I'm going to use create a brand new location. For my original ground, I'm going to use the Og plus excavation. Am I in the right folder? Nope. This one. And I didn't draw a feature to represent my center line, or if I did, I can't remember what it's called. So I'm just going to start in the center and figure everything out from here. Okay. Let's go to left, from left to right. We'll start here, and we'll go over here. Probably should have turned on snapping. That's close enough. And the cross-section doesn't look great. Edit templates. I created a template just for this purpose, and it's called Webinar. Okay, I have to select it. Ah, there we go. Okay. Okay, there we go. Now, when you design in location, you generally get 1 or 2 cross sections every, 20 meters or 50 feet or whatever. We need cross sections all the way along here, and I'm going to use that same spacing, 1/2 meter. So there's lots of different ways you can do this. I like to just use the plan option reporting points. Auto interval points. Let's put in a point every 0.5 meters and make sure that's turned on. Okay. Did I turn that on? Try that again. Yeah, it's on. Okay, good. And yeah, now let's put in a profile. Pretty simple profile, 1 line. And there's my volume, 300 cubic meters or 290. Just the same as in the terrain. That's good. It should be a tiny bit less because we got this surfacing on top here. And now let's add the culvert. So I go to my culvert editor, add a culvert, and wait a minute, I don't want to put it there. We want to put it right in the middle, right? Let's go in the plan window and figure out where we want to put it. We want to put it right about there. So there, right on the center line. Now let's add a culvert. And this culvert, as you can see, is perpendicular to the road, which is kind of the wrong angle. It's also got a few other properties I want to change. So first of all, let's make it bigger. Whoops, working in millimeters here, 1500. That's good. I want it to sit on the ground. I don't want it to be attached to the edges. Okay, so let's make it sit on the ground. Fill depth, cut depth at center line 0. Okay. And skew. Now it took me a little while to get this, so did it by trial and error, but basically 113 degrees works nicely. There we go. And length. Let's make the thing, well, gee, offset here is 8 meters. Okay, So let's go out 8 on each side. Needs to go a little further. Let's try 9 each side. Because we certainly want it to go outside the fill. There we go. Good. Now the problem with this is that it doesn't give you any indication of the volume here. Well, that's not entirely true. You can ask it to give you the excluded volume of the culvert, and it will estimate the volume. That's a data option. So if I go back to my profile and look at my mass haul, it still says 290. And we can export this to terrain. And in version 9, this is the sneak preview of version 9. When you do save as terrain, let's just pick a terrain file name here. I've already done this into another folder. I'll open it in a sec. When you save to terrain from location, in version 8, you can create a surface from cross sections and so on. In version 9, there's a new checkbox over here called culvert, and it'll create for you a 3D culvert. So I'll just show you what that looks like. So anyway, and to recap, yes, you can create a plan profile cross section. Notice that the cross section is not, well, let me just illustrate where the cross section is by moving my cursor. It's perpendicular. You can see the cursor moving in the plan. So that's why it's hitting the edge here. We're looking at a projection onto a perpendicular cross section. So it's not an ideal section. You really have to take it to terrain to get a skewed cross section. And you can do that in both version 8 and version 9, but let's take a look at the results from a version 9 export. Now would be a good time to ask questions. If you have anything you want to type into the questions panel, I'd be happy to answer it. And for that sneak preview, let's just go back to the folder where I created it. There, let's see what that looks like. Yeah. So in version 9, there is the export in the plan window from the little design that I just made. And in 3D, it looks pretty cool. Let's just change that surface, the front surface, to be a little transparent here. There. So that's the picture that Aaron showed you at the beginning. And you can see that we've got a 3D graphic that represents the pipe. And it comes with the rest of the design surface as well. Okay, well, thank you very much for your patience, and I hope you enjoyed our webinar today on culvert replacement. You will receive an email when we're ready to post it up to YouTube. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. And if you have any additional questions, we are always welcome to email those to us. You can reach the support team at support@softtree.com, and they're happy to answer them. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.